Welcome to episode 5 in May, where we cherish our habit to be grateful. May's color is grateful pink, so think pink this month to be in the pink. Our goal for May, in addition to appreciating others, take the time to appreciate yourself. Do something you've always wanted to do. And remember that gratitude invites grace. You know, one of the most underestimated gifts in life is gratitude. The Buddhists have a prayer. Thank you for everything. Of course, we want to be grateful for our blessings and our challenges as well. Our blessings give us comfort and peace of mind and the feeling all is well. Our challenges call us forth to be better, to be wiser, to risk rather than play it safe. It's going to sound like the old cliche law of attraction, but it's true. We get more of what we focus on. Gratitude is an affirmation of what we want more of. The more we immerse in gratitude, the more others will look at us and say, I'll have what they're having. Hello, I'm Steve Bhaerman, and welcome to May, the 5th month of the year, where we focus on gratitude, seeing our cup of life as full rather than half empty. Many of the great wisdom traditions define gratitude as the most important quality to cultivate, because when we have a grateful outlook, we appreciate what we do have more than we focus and fret on about what we don't have. Life is better that way. Now, May includes a number of celebrations of appreciation, like Mother's Day and Memorial Day. However, if we look at the whole month, it takes a whole month to form an attitude of gratitude. So on the 12 Habits path, let's devote the whole month of May to counting our blessings, yes? Well, as we learned in the introductory episode to the 12 Habits, as the path to mutual enlightenment, this path is a new way to actually put forth our desire for unity and intentional mutual benefit, and put these into practice. We can grow spiritually while at the same time practicing these habits in real life. We achieve what Bruce Lipton calls heaven on earth, which is why he endorses the 12 Habits path. You know, the best way to create heaven on earth is by starting there. And so when we practice these habits, we actually create a field where we are bringing heaven on earth to the world. Now, these 12 habits I have found, and the Swami has found, are the most enjoyable way to actually bring about this great evolution and put it into practice by doing these practices all together, coherently, 1 month at a time. And now I'd like to introduce my cohort in this webinar, the creator of the 12 Habits Path to Unity, Elaine Parke. Welcome, Elaine.
Hi, Steve. Normally I say I'm happy to be here, but since it's May, the month to be grateful, I'm going to say that I'm grateful to be here today with you, talking about this month's habit.
Elaine, okay, pink. Tell us about Grateful Pink.
I was wondering when you were going to ask me about the names of the colors. It kind of naming the colors, why just make them red, blue, green, pink, whatever. So, advertisers sort of make things a little bit clever. And so we use clever language, and consequently, Grateful Pink is kind of a much more fun way of saying pink. And it also repeats the habit of the month. I was delivering a big seminar to all the educators in West Virginia a few years ago. And I remember it was in May. And so the whole auditorium was covered in pink posters and signs and balloons and whatever. And of course, there were men and women there. And all of a sudden, this big, very macho guy came in and he said, he walked up to me, and he had clearly had this shirt made, especially for the event. And it says, macho men wear pink. So everyone's involved in Be Grateful, and everyone's involved in Grateful Pink.
Well, statistics show that 4 out of 5 macho men would rather be in the pink than singing the blues. Okay, so why don't you tell us more? How did you come up with grateful, the habit of grateful for May?
I think I've spoken in earlier episodes about the group in the small community in Pennsylvania who kind of decided what month was what. And in all honesty, this group had the biggest problem trying to decide whether May was going to be grateful or whether November was going to be grateful, because Thanksgiving is in November. But ultimately, we chose Be Grateful for May because there's so many major holidays and celebrations and traditions around being grateful in May, or at least more than just Thanksgiving in November. I mean, there's Memorial Day, there's Mother's Day, it's end of the year, so it's employee appreciation and teacher appreciation, and it seems like many things having to do with appreciation are going on in May. And that's why ultimately, although it was a tough decision, the group decided to make May the month to be appreciative. Holidays and things like Mother's Day, Memorial Day, they're sort of traditions, and you can't, you have to know when they're happening in order to make something a tradition. You have to know when it's coming up. So we know when Memorial Day is coming up. We know when Mother's Day is coming up. Skipping ahead to the month that is in November, where Thanksgiving, we know when that is. So one of the goals of the entire 12 Habits path is to create a tradition out of celebrating Be Grateful in May, or whatever the monthly habit is. I just wanted to kind of bring that up with the idea of creating traditions so that everyone can be thinking the same thing and doing the same thing at the same time and enjoying it.
I really like the idea of turning these into new traditions, because sometimes the old traditions, they kind of lose their energy. They become a bit obsolete, but gratitude is never going to be obsolete. Now, May 1st, did you know, is also International Workers' Day, which is based on a demonstration May 1st, 1886, where the American Federation of Labor demanded an end to the 16-hour work week, okay? So we've also talked about gratitude for May. So if you're not working 16 hours a day, you can be grateful for May Day. Now, I have a great quote here, Elaine, from the American Benedictine monk, Brother David Steindl-Rast. He says, "The root of joy is gratefulness. It's not that joy makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us joyful." Gratitude and joy. Tell us more.
Well, when you bring up gratitude and joy, Steve, I sort of think of another reason why May is a good month to be grateful. And that's when, nature is returning. Nature is blooming. I know I've lived in the home I'm in right now for like 6 or 7 years, and it wasn't until last year that I managed to plant some tulip bulbs and some of the early spring bulbs, the crocuses and things like that. And just, the gratitude I felt going out to the front of the house and watching these little flowers that little bulbs that I'd put in the fall before come up. There's just such a joy to feeling grateful. That's why Oprah Winfrey asks us to make a grateful journal, because when you have an attitude of gratitude, it fills you. You're always sort of full. I kind of go back to the point you made really early on when you were introducing gratitude about the glass half full and the glass half empty, which is kind of a metaphor for your attitude, whether you have a positive attitude or a negative attitude. But if you want to make that glass a grateful attitude, then we're grateful we have a glass at all.
I want to offer these interesting statistics here. You'll see them on the screen here. In a study of 800 descriptive trait words, the word grateful was rated in the top 4% in terms of likability. Here are some other statistics. Regular gratitude, journaling, has been shown to result in 5 to 15% increases in optimism. Isn't that interesting? Optimism. And 25% increased sleep quality. So I guess optimists sleep better. Another statistic, over 90% of American teenagers and adults indicated that expressing gratitude made them extremely happy or somewhat happy. So if you're not happy, here might be a clue. Express gratitude. Focus on that. Practicing gratitude has numerous positive effects both on our body and on our psyche. These include decreased symptoms of depression, reduced pain and inflammation, lowered cortisol and blood pressure, and triggering the release of mood-regulating neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and oxytocin. Practicing gratitude also increases emotional resiliency, generosity, and optimism. Studies have found that keeping a gratitude journal, as Elaine said, for just 3 weeks boosted the immune system, quality of sleep, and compassion, and also reduced blood pressure, loneliness, and isolation. Now, here we see a graph from the HeartMath Institute based on their research. Expressing gratitude or appreciation causes our heart rhythms to become more coherent, strengthening mental clarity, resilience, and well-being, and improving our heart health in measurable ways. Well, I have to say that certainly makes me grateful for gratitude. I think there really is a connection between grace and gratitude. When we're grateful, there is a state of grace that we create. We seem to create this field. A few years ago, I was going through a lot of difficulties and living in Santa Rosa, California, right near the big traditional cemetery in Santa Rosa. So I would go to the cemetery, very peaceful there. I go to the cemetery to take my little walks. And apparently there was somebody in Santa Rosa who was quite well known, one of the founders, and his last name was Grace, right? So there is this big pillar that says Grace. And so there's this beautiful grove of trees around there. And every day that I went for a walk when I lived there, I would come to what I call Grace Grove. And while I was there, I really allowed myself to feel grateful for the things in my life that I loved, and all of these other things. And I could really feel this connection. I could feel this state of grace. I could feel this state of peace coming over me. So gratitude, like so many other positive habits and qualities, is something that takes our attention away from ourselves. We in previous episodes, we've talked about having our attention out as opposed to in. When our attention is in, we're focused on our own inner world, our minds, our worries, etc. When our attention is out, we're focused out there on the world. And when we're grateful, we're always grateful for something that's out there. The great gratitude expert, Robert Emmons, he calls gratitude an affirmation of goodness. So again, when you are grateful for the sources of goodness outside of ourselves. And this is what allows you to close that loop and really bring more light, more grace, more gratitude, and then more things to be grateful for. Elaine, you've been on this path for quite a while. You've done this before. Tell me about some of the activities over the years where people along the habits path have used the month to celebrate goodness by being grateful.
Well, I have lots of just wonderful, playful answers to that question of things that I've experienced over the years. But thinking about what you talked about the place that you go to. So now we have two things. We try to cultivate an attitude of gratitude, but also you brought up the idea of finding a place for grace for you. And so there's an attitude of gratitude and a place for grace. I think many of us may have a place in our home where we do our meditations and our reflections. So thinking about being grateful for that place that we are able to find and go to bring us out so that we're out and learn how to be more connected. I think that's a very important addition to what we're learning and talking about during this month, to be grateful, to be thankful, to be appreciative, however you want to use it. I think one of my favorite stories is that the 12 Habits had been active in a community, actually a community in West Virginia, for like a year and a half. And it was coming up on May. And so in this town, so the kids were doing it in the schools, then the merchants and institutions in the community, they had posters. And so on the first of the month, they would put up the month poster, whatever it was, so that as the young people, well, as everybody in the community moved around the community, they were being reminded of whatever that month's habit was. So the English teachers in the school district got together and decided to have every student in the school write a thank you note to the merchants who were actually helping these kids be with their character and become better people, actually better future employees. And so every student in the entire school district wrote a thank you note, and they were all divided into envelopes. And on the first day of May, every merchant in the town who had been a part of the drugstore, the grocery store, the pizza shop, I mean, you name it, every merchant and every organization in the community that had been participating in this and helping the kids got a big manila bag of thank you notes. So that was one of my favorite stories. I think I also told you in March about the bickering adults who baked a cake to get along together and be more grateful. And so also during the month of May, when they were having teacher appreciation and so forth, a lot of different communities, I saw many be appreciative cakes that were baked, knowing that be grateful and be appreciated was the habit for that month. Many things. Oh, one more. I myself, remember, I've been at the heart of this for such a long time that I actually personally use May as kind of my thank you catch-up month. So let's say, maybe I'd been to a dinner party in December or, something I had done. And actually, while it's not that many these days, I think the first year that I decided to do that, I wrote 73 thank you notes in May for things, kindnesses that people had done to me, things that I might have written a thank you note but never got around to it. So, you can play Be Grateful catch up during that month. Make that call, write that note. Just another way of expressing be grateful during the month of May.
I also love the word appreciation. The Swami says the more we appreciate ourselves, the more ourselves appreciate. We get better through appreciation. You also said, I love this quote, gratitude is a harmonious song of universal oneness. And another one, appreciating the reciprocity of life. What does that mean to you, Elaine?
Well, I think you've heard me explain in the past where that, I feel that the cosmic essence that's resonating in each of us that we have access to is resonating harmony. So whereas, let's say, January is help others. So when we're helping others or when we're becoming involved and doing things for others, then gratitude is sort of the reciprocity of the giving. Not taking, but being grateful is sort of the recipe. So it creates the spiraling harmony of giving and being grateful and oneness. And I think that's a very important perspective and a very important way to look at it. Honestly, the golden rule itself is a statement of reciprocity. Do unto others as you might have them do unto you, or as they would like have done unto them. There are many ways of expressing it. Actually, the original language of the Golden Rule is attributed to the Sumerian sun god Utu back in 2350 BC. And it's my favorite version. Whatever has breath, you shepherd equally. You are their keeper above and below. There's much to be grateful for in celebrating the Golden Rule. And while we know the Golden Rule is a practice, what we're hoping with the 12 habits is that we'll turn the Golden Rule into a tradition that many people will be celebrating together 1 month at a time.
I appreciate the power of appreciation, particularly when you have other people in your life who appreciate you and who you appreciate. I think it's a way of really weaving our connection with the world and with other people. What do you think, Elaine?
Well, I think the attitude of gratitude reminds me of a distinction that I often make between the concept of being lonely and being lonesome. Think about those two words, being lonely and being lonesome. When someone is lonely, there's an emptiness. there's a great deep emptiness. And this is where, suicides and depression and they're feeling empty. I've felt close to it once in a while, and it's almost like a sinking feeling. But when you feel lonesome, that means that you feel the context of life around you, that that you have friends and family and neighbors and that there are other people that are in the context of your life. And at a certain moment, they might not be with you. You might be alone in your house or your apartment or wherever you live. And you may be thinking of one of these people and you're lonesome for them. You wish they were there with you, but it's not the same thing as being lonely. And this again is where I think feeling an attitude of gratitude, feeling grateful, feeling the contextualness of the harmony of our life with others is very important to mental health and to leading a positive life where you're happier, because you don't feel the emptiness of loss, because you always have something to feel grateful for. I think what happens when we're feeling an attitude of gratitude is that we're sending reciprocity back into the universe. I mean, we can send being grumpy back into the universe too, or we can send being grateful back into the universe. I think that where it's sort of, if you suddenly bring yourself into a feeling of gratitude, you can break a negative pattern that you might have going. Something might go wrong, something might not be working the way you'd like it to. And suddenly if you can remind yourself, with the 12 habits, you can go on the website and get a Be Grateful bookmark that you can remember to be more grateful. But if you can bring yourself into an attitude of gratitude, it helps reduce the stress of the things that are going wrong in your life, because you're keeping your mind, not only on the fact that you have a glass half full rather than half empty, but also being glad that you have a glass at all.
Wow, you're so right about that. One of the great sources of gratitude are the people you have in your life who love you and who you love in return. And these people don't even have to be on the planet anymore. They can be off planet. They can be in our memories and our hearts. We can still appreciate them and feel the vibration of their love.
Well, I do appreciate that there are those in our lives who may not still be here, who are still influencing us and having a positive influence on us. I think I already spoke of a neighbor who introduced me to volunteering, but I probably haven't spoken about my grandfather. My grandfather gave me love and affection when I was with him. And I was fortunate enough that in the spring, when school was out, I was driven to my grandparents and stayed with my grandparents all summer long, and on a little farm in a small town in southern Ohio, and didn't come back to my home where I had all the difficulties until fall. So my grandparents, especially my grandfather, was a really big part of helping me learn to connect emotionally with other people, because without him, I wouldn't have learned that aspect of a healthy adulthood. Anyway, I was a teenager. I was 16 and my grandfather was quite ill. And I was at a kind of a Christian youth camp up on a mountaintop on a Saturday night. And my mother was at my grandparents, being with my grandfather who was sick. And I always was praying that, my grandfather would get well. And suddenly that prayer changed a little bit. And then all of a sudden I felt this brush on my shoulder, and it kind of lit up around me. And all of a sudden, in this light, I saw this very hazy vision of my grandfather with sort of another hazy figure, not far behind. And I just saw that figure and it just disappeared. And at that moment, I completely changed my perception of wanting my grandfather to be better, or at least stay on this earth, because I sort of knew something had happened. So Sunday night, I got off the bus and my father was there alone without my sister. And before my father could say anything to me, I went up to my father and I said, Grandpa died. And my father said, Oh, yes. How did you know? And of course, at that age, you wouldn't dare tell your father something what had really happened to me. And so I just said, I just sort of knew, Daddy. And I said, When did he die? And he said, Well, I don't know, probably around 6:30 or so Saturday night. And it turns out there was a change between daylight saving, and we didn't have daylight saving then. They did, but we didn't. Consequently, the exact time when I had had this illumination with my grandfather brushing my shoulder on this mountaintop gathering with young people is probably the time that my grandfather chose to leave the earth. And yet he came by and said goodbye. And I will always be grateful for that moment. So when the people who leave your space come back, this is one of the main things that you can feel gratitude about. Now I've explained that I'm in a similar situation as Steve. Steve's mother is no longer on the earth, but she guides him, and my grandfather also guides me, and I'm very grateful about that. The book, The Habits of Unity, is full of lots of quotes through all the months, all 12 months. And most of the quotes are by other people, but there are a few in there that are by me. And one of the quotes in that book by me is, "You never lose someone, you just don't get more." Meaning, no one can ever take away all the beautiful hours of love and joy that you've spent with those in your life who have now passed to another dimension, but you just don't get more. Now, whether you'll get more on the other dimension, that's a whole other ball game. A lot of people speak about that, but at least you have the memories, and those memories nourish you and you sustain you and actually come to you in the moment and guide you. And that's a huge area of appreciation in my life.
I really appreciate that story about your grandfather literally being brushed by him, a brush with immortality, a brush with infinity, and remembering that, as quantum physics is telling us, that time is an illusion. So there is only now. So everything that has ever existed exists in this now. And I think as we develop our inner resources, we are going to find more and more ways to connect with the infinite and connect with people who aren't here anymore. And having this perpetual fountain of love allows you to share it with others. All of the love that my mother gave me, my grandmother gave me, even though I'm not getting any more of that, it is available in my storehouse to share with other people. Now, it's very easy to be grateful for things we want and like and enjoy. It's harder to be grateful for our hardships. And yet, think about it, the things that are challenging to us, our biggest obstacles, can be a great source of growth. And I would say one of the great turning points in my life came in my early 30s. I had a dream job. My dream job was teaching auto workers at Wayne State University in Detroit. It was a great job, but I had to be laid off from this job because I wasn't tenured. They had to put their tenured people somewhere. And it was a bit of a dark night of the soul for me. The only job I could get, because I lived on a farm and knew how to operate equipment, was as an equipment operator for the City of Ann Arbor, Michigan Parks and Forestry Department. And while I was there, a fellow worker, a brilliant psychologist disguised as a truck driver, he and I started an underground humorous newspaper for the guys at the shop. And we totally transformed the workplace through humor. We'll be talking about that later on in these episodes. And the other thing that happened was it set me on the path that I've been on for the past 35 years or so, which is doing comedy. Had I not lost the dream job, had I not gone through the dark night of the soul, I would never have found my true calling. And I know many people out there have similar stories. So, Elaine, anything else to add regarding being grateful? Any tips?
I think the most important or one of the most important things about gratitude is to just pause. And when you pause and you let the gratitude come into your life, I mean, when you pause, when you sit down to a meal and you pause, I mean, many people in all faiths pause to appreciate the food. They say a grace, or, say something appreciative, or say something thankful. But everyone pauses together before they begin a meal. I think saying grace before a meal is one of the a very important aspect of gratitude, because it gives us that moment of pause to allow. So you act, and then you have a moment of pause where you're grateful, and then you act and you have a moment of pause where you're grateful. And if you start the month and start the morning with your reflections, I appreciate my ability to be grateful as part of your morning reflection, you keep that going during the day, then that's what's going to enrich your life and make your life more grateful. Like in the book, in addition to a little different insight on each habit for the month, at the bottom of the half-page reading for a day in a month is a little tip on something to do. So you're asking about tips. So I'm actually got the book here. So for instance, in May, some of the tips, I call them praise phrases. So you put a smile on your face. You can say that to somebody. A praise phrase number 12, you've got it now. Praise phrase number 13, you've earned a big hug for doing good without expecting gratitude. Praise phrase number 14, I appreciate your directness. Way back, I talked about a friend who was very direct with me about my attitude about my mother. So I'm still appreciating her today. So that, just those little tips out in public, when someone of service has bagged your groceries, or, just remember to take those moments and pause before you go on to the next thing, and let that person who's just interacted with you know that you appreciate what they have done in that exact moment, just then in your life. And I think that you're going to find you're going to have a wonderful May, and you're going to be much more grateful. You're going to be much more uplifted and much happier. Another area of gratitude is who could you think of to thank? A call, a text, an email. In May, they might not be expecting it, but it's the month to be grateful, and you might bring them into the 12 habit protocol because you reach out and thank them for something, and they're like, wow, and you're saying, I'm doing this because this is May, the month to be grateful. When you go grocery shopping, or have your mail delivered, or trash, or whatever it is, these small acts, just make that pause and take a few minutes to say something or respond, and let another person know that you appreciate their role in your life. And then there's appreciating the people that you may not even see. What about the clothes you're wearing? What about the appliances that you use? There is a web of life, and every day, the web of life, we are living in that web of life. And we so often fail to forget that there are people, and the souls and the hearts of people doing jobs that probably don't get the appreciation that they deserve for the work that they're doing. But because of them, we're sitting on this chair. Because of them, we have a light showing down on us. Because of them, we have a table full of food. So that really, when we're alone in our house and feeling hopefully maybe lonesome for others, but not lonely, we can also feel more whole, because we're appreciating all the other people who contribute to our life, whether we know them or not. I appreciate my little dog, Molly. She cuddles up with me in the morning before I get out of bed. Once in a while, she's gotten in the way of some of the screenings of our webinars, but we laugh about it. And she's a companion for me, and I love her dearly. And I am so grateful that this sweet little dog, Molly Murphy, is in my life. So I appreciate my puppy. I appreciate my family, my friends, all the people who've created the room I'm sitting in right now. An attitude of gratitude is the way to handle this month.
I love what you said about your dog, Molly, because dogs are natural appreciators. They're natural beaming beings of unconditional love. And when you're inside yourself with an emotion that you're stuck with, looking at a dog, the Swami says that when we come in contact with a friendly dog, the body secretes these hormones called peptides, which make us feel happier. Unconditional love brings us out of ourselves and helps us be more appreciative. And remember, what you appreciate appreciates. So it's a way of remembering that the cup is not just not half empty, it's overflowing with blessings. And these blessings remind us of the good things in life, even when we're stuck in a challenging place. So here's an invitation. I invite you to start this process of keeping a gratitude journal. I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I have found that by immersing myself every day at the start of the day in those things in my life that I consider blessings, it really gives me perspective throughout the whole day. And I'm able to start the day under a full head of esteem. Yes? Okay. So in addition to journaling, here's my suggestion. Because remember, there's a lot of other grateful people out there, other people who are doing this practice the same time that you are. So be sure to go to our website, go to our Facebook group, and become one of our peer participants and share gratitude and find out what other people are doing. The practice for this month, begin each day, whether you write it down or not, reflecting on what you're most grateful for, and then each day at the end of the day, recount the blessings that manifested that day. Now, for extra credit, notice the challenges that you would be grateful for if you knew that they would accelerate your growth, right? Now, accept that those challenges will indeed help you become more of who you really are. So, how does that feel?